Steven, and Big Mike. We're talking today at the Star. Jerry, your thoughts? How you feel? Are you going to be moving up the draft, down the draft, or staying pat?
Well, I'll speak for my staff. Steven's, as I mentioned, very influential on some of those earlier ones. But I'm kidding him. But the bottom line is this. It hasn't been an overall philosophy. It's been the situation. And there is a real innate temptation to improve your situation and to physically do something about it rather than sit there and wait for the gods to take care of you. And so there is a instinctive feel about making a trade. And I would say the same thing starts going with you draft-wise until you look with the experience you've had and you look over there, and when you take those 4 threes for that one, 3 threes for that one, and you also remember what's left in the third round compared to what you're giving up in the first round, and you get hand cramps and lockjaw and don't do it. So my point is the experience of that it will be all at play here. And I'm not saying maybe it's great to have somebody that's can operate without a net. Maybe that's better. But I think personally, we've got a great mix of reflection on past. Great. I know we have Mike. I don't want to speak for Mike, and I will, though. He's got more input here than they had at Green Bay. Okay, and then let him expound on it. But I've always wanted coaches to be involved with us in a big way, and he had everything to do with getting Lamb. Mike did, and so from that standpoint. And I think that's a plus, by the way, too. But my point is that I think we've got a great combination. I'm satisfied with it, and we make the pick. And if there's ever been a truer collaboration since I've been with the Cowboys, I don't know when it was.
Okay, the word I got to get this out. The word that comes to mind immediately after hearing that is meandering.
Well, sure. Jerry, how old now?
I mean, regardless of age, that was a lot there. My favorite part of that clip was
80 years old.
Yeah, my favorite part of that clip was, hey, I'm not going to speak for Mike, but I'm going to speak for Mike. All right.
Yeah, but he was being cheeky. It's worth noting, because this is the thing. We do this, we get out here, we start playing these cuts out of context, and it's incumbent upon us to give you the context. Yes. One thing I will tell you, Jerry was feeling good. Right, I don't know if he had some Johnny Walker, and I'm not trying to say he was drunk or anything, but he was just feeling good. He was playful, as we will talk about later. And so that was one of those things that he got in there. He had a little bit of playfulness with Mike, but with Mike McCarthy in particular. But really what he was getting at, within the context of the last, few questions, was talking about the ways in which the room, we start talking about what the Cowboys have done in the past and their unwillingness to move up, or the idea that they haven't in a while. And Steven also spoke to this, is the idea that, circumstances did not, show them that they needed to move up in these places. And what Jerry was saying there is, we have a diverse room, and he's not just saying that there's a whole bunch of people making this pick, but there's people that have moved up in certain places. There are people that have not. There's people that, so that they have all of these things within them, is basically what he's saying. All that being said, is this a year that you feel like they have a need to move forward? Because that's what ultimately it feels like it comes down to.
Well, here's my take on this. You're only moving up for one reason, and that's a reason that a lot of Cowboys fans and RJ Choppy have lamented.
A quarterback?
No.
Well, that's what, and I should have found Steven's response on this, because that's basically, and yes, he does have it in there, Steven moving up in the draft. Medford, if you can make sure how long that is for me. Because basically what he was pointing to is the idea that there's only one position that it behooves you to move up in the draft on.
Yeah, and that would be normally a quarterback. But in this case, you don't have a need for one. And Steven talked about that today, that they are in a position with the transition that they were able to have, however you may feel about it, from Tony Romo to Dak Prescott, that they have not had to have the need to go get a quarterback. But if the Cowboys are moving up, there's only one player in my mind they're moving up to go and get.
I don't know that that's something that they do, man.
And I don't think they do either.
Especially with how clearly Steven spoke about that. Now, of course, like,
what they say and what they do are two totally different things.
There you go. But like, Steven seems to be at least one of the people that I think a lot of folks feel like they have an idea of his mentality. And when he says that so clearly, it does seem like they're in a place where,
they're not going to go up and go get Bijan Robinson.
I don't
That's the player
so.
I'm referring to. But as you have eloquently stated throughout the course of this season, especially this particular time of the year, it's Lion season.
That is correct.
So what they may say today may be totally different action-wise on Thursday night. Now, where I am starting to coalesce around is the idea, because let's kind of put it on the table.
Put what on the table?
That a tight end is coming.
Oh, okay.
To Dallas.
I was like, hey, man,
it feels
I get
like
it's 950, but you acting a little different.
Well, this is. Did you see Mike Giardi's report today from the NFL Network? Or I guess he's not with the NFL Network anymore. I think he got let go a little bit ago. The point is, sources are telling him, like, hey, Cowboys have done a lot of work on Michael Mayer. Now, that is, I believe, the fifth person between Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, Dane Brugler, Jane Slater, and now Mike Giardi.
Sure.
All of them have now said, hey, that Michael Mayer thing, you might want to pay attention to that real closely. To which I say, and Terez, I want to hear your opinion on this.
Uh-oh.
I'm not here for it. Do yourself a favor. Bobby Bell had an excellent description on what the kind of player you're getting in Michael Mayer and how he tested versus some of the great tight ends that we have seen. Oh, boy. Dynamic is not the word you use for Michael Mayer. Dalton Kincaid, yes, 972. If you want to see them at 26, that would be the word I would use for him. Dynamic is not a word I would associate with Michael Mayer. Solid football player, yes. Dynamic, no.
And that word dynamic is important because that's a word that the Cowboys have used themselves, right?
Yes.
The idea of dynamism. But
I like that. That was good.
Yeah, I was like, what is the correct term of that phrasing that? Regardless, my thing about Michael Mayer though is if you were going to have that perspective with a tight end, which I think you're entitled to, it does not feel like people have that same feeling with Jackson Smith and Jigba. And why I am saying that is Michael Mayer was clearly the best tight end coming out of college football this past season because Brock Bowers still exists and is really good. But Michael Mayer was really, really good at Notre Dame. Like, I saw him play. Incredible stuff. But he was just he's one of those dudes that, yes, he is not dynamic. There's maybe not a lot of things you could point to like this is an excellent thing, but it came out in the wash as, oh, this dude's really good at football. Right? And so it ends up being this thing where you almost focus on the intangible all the way together because the actual tangibles that you are there to quantify don't necessarily point to it. And you know who that sounds like to me? Wide receiver 1, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Because the thing about it is we talk about all the breakdown of that is that he doesn't have like incredible speed, right? The hands aren't like wildly incredible, like the radius or whatever. He's just a dude that happens to get open, right? He just manages to get open, and he does it like that. And so those are two sides of the same coin, at least in my estimation, when it comes to like profile of a player. And we do not have largely, I think, the same perspective on those two guys. And really the question I have is why? Because if you look up and you go, well, that's not really the type of guy that I want. All right, that's fine. You're entitled to that 100%. I just don't understand why two guys of a similar profile, at least in that way, are looked at so disparately from you.
Oh, man. I mean, it's a tough question. It's a debate there. But for me, for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I believe is the best receiver in this class, the position of value.
Because the wide receivers in this class aren't as strong as others that we've seen, other classes rather.
No, they're not. But that to me, I'm thinking about the long-term future also for the wide receiver room for Dallas. Because if you feel like you're going to move off of Brandon Cooks possibly after, the 1 year, yes, you have him under contract for a couple of years, but you would have a rookie contract with Jackson Smith and Jigba if he's there, because honestly, I don't think he'll be there In fact, I think he may be the pick for the Green Bay Packers, actually.
Yeah, I could see that, especially with the news that we got today.
In light of today's news. But if he is there, I would love to see that happen for the Cowboys. If you're going to have a Jackson Smith and Jigba, CeeDee Lamb, to a lesser degree, Michael Gallup, what you decide to do with Brandon Cooks.
But I find that to be crazy in some ways because Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be exclusively a slot guy. He does not profile as like an outside guy. And with that being the case, isn't that somewhat similar to the tight end, like the dynamic playing in that slot area, playing in the seam area, right?
Well, and McCarthy talked about it today a little bit with the 3 different things that he's looking for from, 3 different tight ends that he's looking for. And Mayer going 6'4", 6'5", 245, 250, provides you an inline blocker.
Yes.
But you also need a guy that can also be split in as well, can line up off the line, and be able to be a guy that can catch the ball and make some things happen down the field. So, again, I'm not saying that Mayer is not a bad football player. It's a really, really good football player.
Just not one that you want.
It's not the one that I would see and would want at 26, given what you could address at offensive line.
Yes. Which, by the way, have you kind of come to the idea that that's what it feels like? Because that's kind of what I'm starting to feel like. I understand that there was a lot of talk. Like they mentioned that Let's Go is having a really great off season, and that's all fine and good. But the Josh Ball thing, the idea that he might work inside, I'm like, okay, that's not real.
Well, here's McCarthy on that a little bit when it comes to what Josh Ball, Matt Waletzko, and what the offensive line thing is looking like.
Both Josh and Matt individually feel great about him. I mean, Matt's having a great off season. Obviously had the surgery, so he's knocking it out of the park there. And Josh, I think, clearly will work more inside than out. So he's does a tremendous job in the off-season program and things like that. I'm excited to see those guys play in the preseason. They're ready. We just got to get them battle tested, but they've made an excellent. They're making all the progress you look for in your second and third players. So to me, they're right on schedule. The process really going back to the draft. I mean, it's really what I just answered earlier. You trust in your process, and they fit the profile what we're looking for in offensive linemen, and I kind of like those 6'7" offensive linemen.
Yeah, but the important part of that is second and third player, and I think that by that he means like your second offensive line, third offensive line, like on the depth chart type things. We talking about a dude that you need to be capable of starting. And so I still think you look at the ways that, these linemen have been stacking up, there's a possibility of getting a good one. I understand lineman is never a sexy pick, but it could be a vital one for this team. And it does feel like that might be the place that's most effective for the Cowboys at 26.